Okay, so our next speaker is Uta Hinrichs. I met Uta when I was working in Calgary, and she's a computer scientist, and she's probably gonna be horrified when I say that she's also a designer of interactive installations for several different environments. I believe she's gonna be talking a little bit about experience that had to do with museum, but also an art gallery.
Okay, thanks Miguel for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here today. As Miguel said, my name is Uta. I'm a research fellow at the School of Computer Science, working with Miguel Center and Aaron Quigley. I'm a member of the SACHI HCI group as well. So I just arrived here in St. Andrews from the University of Calgary in August, and I did there my PhD on supporting open-ended information exploration and exhibition spaces, and I did that by using or combining information visualization with direct touch displays. So I'm trying to give you some examples on what this is all about in the following presentation. So Mark already mentioned it previously in the presentation that there's a lot of technology moving nowadays into public exhibition spaces, not only museums and art galleries, but also library spaces, for instance. And a lot of museums and art galleries are buying into direct touch technology nowadays, so large tabletop displays or vertical walls. But what we still see oftentimes, and not all of them, there's really awesome installations out there, but a lot of them are what I would call direct touch information kiosks, where we have some visual information and some text, and then we have the next button or something like that that actually guides you in a linear way through some kind of story or narrative. And of course, that can be a really powerful way to tell visitors a story and to guide them through information. But Mark already touched on that, and I think so as well, that museums and public spaces can be a really participatory space, so they can actually offer much more opportunities to explore information in more open-ended ways. So if we look at exhibition spaces, we have very interesting characteristics. We have very diverse audiences, children interacting alongside elderly people. People usually don't have a clear task in mind, but they kind of spontaneously follow up on their interests and in that way explore information. They are not only looking for education, but also for entertaining experiences. And as Mark mentioned, oftentimes they really want to share their experiences and the information that they find together with their family or friends. So one way that I try to support these kind of characteristics and behaviors in exhibition spaces is to use information visualization as a way to present information to people so they can explore them in an open-ended, self-guided way. And when we talk about information visualization, I'm not talking about bar charts or pie charts that we know from Excel, but rather visual interfaces that are based on visual metaphors, for instance, that really can reflect on the exhibition, on the overall exhibition content, on other artifacts that the exhibition has to offer, that are of course self-explanatory, so people can just dive into the information and start to explore and find stuff out, and that maybe also tell a little story or a narrative. And so to combine that with large direct touch displays, what's really important is to design for walk-up and use interaction, because visitors are not likely to read elaborate instructions on how to interact, and to also support some kind of playful exploration to then maybe guide into more meaningful information explorations. So I'll present two case studies that I've worked on as part of my PhD research. And I did them in collaboration with Holly Schmidt, who's an installation artist in Vancouver. So they have kind of an artistic component to them as well. So they're all standalone exhibits that also reflect on other content. So I'll start with Memory and Code, which was the first installation we created, and it was basically driven by both our interest in the dimensions of human memory. Human memory is really dynamic. We often forget things. Experiences shape how our memories change. So we try to reflect that and invite people to explore this concept in an interactive way through this tabletop installation. So you can see there's little memory cells constantly floating on the tabletop surface that people can explore, and they can also add their own thoughts or experiences by using these little typing devices. So they can type in a little narrative, and that transforms into a cell that then starts to float on the tabletop surface. So over time, this kind of collective memory evolves on the tabletop display. Cells kind of move around on their own, so they have their own little life. But visitors can interact with them, they can move them around, toss them around, they can touch the nucleus of the cell that will then reveal the memory the cell is containing. And they can also merge cells, and this is how memories constantly change in the installation. As cells are moved, their narrative are merged as well and distorted, and the appearance of the cell also changes. And we have a forgetting function in there, so every cell has a little lifetime, so it becomes paler and paler over time, but the more visitors interact with it, the longer it will stay in the system, and the more pronounced it will look. So this shows just a little video snippet of the insertion. It's pretty dark, but you can see the tabletop display with the cells floating in the typing devices, where people can add their own thoughts. And we had this installed as part of an art exhibition in an art gallery, and then later on in the conference venue as well. And we collected some very informal observations of how people used this installation and how they reacted to this. So first of all, of course, we saw a lot of playful interactions. People just toss around number cells like crazy, try to merge as many cells as possible to create huge narratives. But they also mentioned that they really like this kind of notion that all the information is presented at the same level, so you can really see what's there, and then you can start to explore and make a lot of serendipitous discoveries. People also interacted together with the tabletop, so for instance, they discussed the content of cells they discovered, but they also wrote, for instance, little messages to each other via cells by tossing them across the table. And what we found very interesting was that a lot of visitors came back several times just to see how their cell had evolved over time, and if it was still in the system or if it was merged with other cells. So this shows us that this kind of participatory aspect that Mark mentioned as well really creates a personal relevance to visitors and maybe helps to engage them more with the content of the installation. So the installation becomes some kind of personal relevance. So the second installation Holly and me collaborated on is called EM Dialogue, and the concept here was a little bit different because in Memory and Code, the entire data set was created by visitors, but with EM Dialogue, we created a data set ourselves and then presented that to visitors to give them more information about the exhibition content. The installation was designed for the Glamour Museum in Calgary, which had an art exhibition about the Canadian expressionist artist Emily Carr at the time. And they wanted us to basically create an installation that would give more information to visitors about Emily Carr's life and work. So we decided to create a tabletop installation again, this time with a tilted direct touch display that you can see here. It was surrounded by some ambient sounds to give people the impression that they would be out in the woods on a drafting table exploring Emily Carr's life and work. And next to the table we had a large video projection just to give the installation more presence. The video projection was basically just showing a clone of the tabletop interface. EM Dialogue's interface consists of two different visualizations we created, and they both focus on the life and work of Emily Carr, especially on the discourse that has happened around her, because she's still actively being discussed to the present day. And both visualizations, as you can maybe see, are based on the metaphor of a tree, and that's because most of Emily Carr's paintings actually focus on trees and woods in Western Canada. So on the left-hand side, you see this kind of cut section visualization that represents the cut section of a tree, and it's basically a timeline. So each tree ring represents a decade of the discourse around Emily Carr, and it starts in 1890 when she was pretty young up to the present day. And the little bubbles in the tree rings represent statements that have been made about Emily Carr, statements by Emily Carr herself, or in this case, a painting that she had created at the time. And visitors can run their fingers across the cut section visualization, and all these kind of statements come bubbling up, and they can read them and explore them further. So as a visitor selects a statement or a painting in the cut section, on the right-hand side of the interface, this tree diagram comes up that provides some more context about the statement that has been selected. So in this case, the statement that has been selected is represented by the large square on the very top, and then people can follow down the branches, and they will see that the statement is about Eric Brown, who was back then the director of the National Gallery in Canada, which was really important for national acceptance of artists and the Canadian art movement. whole branch leads back to the Canadian identity theme. There's different themes in the visualizations because the car has been discussed from different perspectives, such as modernism, nature, feminism, or even Canadian identity. But I'll come back to that later. So here you see how a statement can be selected, and then the tree diagram comes up, and then people can interact with this tree diagram as well and explore based on the keywords that they find if there's other interesting paintings or statements. And then if they find something, that statement or painting or photograph will open up in the cut section. So this is how both visualizations are interlinked with each other. Yeah, so these are the different themes represented by colors. So depending on the theme that visitors will find, there will be a different color showing in the tree diagram. So we were, of course, curious how visitors would react to this rather unusual way of presenting information in a museum. So we ran a field study at the Glenville Museum where we had questionnaires. Visitors could give us direct feedback on their experiences, but we also did a lot of observations. First of all, we found that there were different incentives to approach EM dialogue in the first place. Of course, the physical setup evoked a lot of attention. People were curious about the direct touch display and the large video projection. But what actually caught their attention a lot was the interaction of other people. So we noticed this kind of honeypot effect where visitors started to interact, and then other people's attention was caught as well, and they started to interact as well. So we saw these cascades of interaction. This visibility of interaction was so really, really positive because it evoked curiosity and also helped people to learn how to interact with the visualizations because they are not really standard computer interfaces. But it also had some negative aspects. So people were really aware of being observed by strangers, potentially. So one visitor, for instance, said, I'm uncertain about the performance aspect, I'm kind of an introvert. So some people may have felt a little bit embarrassed interacting in a museum like that. Another person said, I felt guilty interacting with the display, not knowing whether or not someone was in the middle of reading the projected screen. So the presence or the awareness of other people may have actually influenced visitors' exploration strategies. People, like in Memory Code, engage in very often in playful explorations, especially this lens effect in the cut section was very popular, so people would just frantically run their fingers across the cut section visualization, but we also observed really in-depth explorations where people followed up on the branches in the tree diagram and read statements very much in depth. So some visitors really liked the installation in general and said things like it enhanced the museum's experience by interlinking chronology and concepts, so exactly what we were aiming for. But then we also got negative statements such as it's just too much reading and not enough pictures. So this just reflects on the diverse audience we have in museums. That people have really different interests, of course, on the topics. We also noticed a lot of collaborative explorations. People would often approach the display in groups. And although we did not support multi-touch capabilities, people would take turns on interacting with the visualization and often discuss the information that they found, which was really positive. So just to wrap up quickly, the lessons learned from these case studies is, so I still strongly believe that visualization has the potential to really nicely support brief and in-depth explorations in museum exhibits or exhibition spaces in general, because you can have an overview and then people can dive into different branches of interest. Visualization can also, especially on large direct touch displays, support various exploration styles and perspectives on the data, so that is also really positive. And we can support very lightweight, intuitive interactions and combine them with meaningful explorations. However, this is still kind of a double-edged sword. We saw a lot of people just engaging in playful interactions and not really looking at the information that was presented. So this is still kind of a difficult balance to find. Something else that is really challenging is really support collaborative information exploration, because large displays really invite for simultaneous interaction, but then what we often observe is interferences between people's interactions that can be very frustrating. So just like to give an outlook, what I'm doing right now for my research here in St. Andrews, I'm still really interested in exploring this notion of open-ended information exploration further in different spaces such as libraries with special collections, for instance, but also for domain experts such as historians. I'm interested in this notion of participation, enabling visitors to really leave traces through their interaction with exhibits. And then also look at different types of technology. Mark was already showing mobile devices and augmented reality, because so far I've only done direct touch large display interaction stuff, but looking at different technology as well. So thank you so